Welcome to the Volpe Report podcast, the state's premier public affairs show dedicated to the topics that matter most to Pennsylvanians. I'm your host, Chuck Volpe. Join us now as we speak to this week's guest.
The following half-hour show is a paid political program and is not endorsed by this station, management, or staff.
The following program is brought to you by Excalibur Insurance Management Services.
Welcome to part two, as promised, of the show that began with Chancellor James McCormick and his son, U.S. Senator Dave McCormick. And now we are on part two with just U.S. Senator Dave McCormick, back to the mundane business of politics. Although it's going to be an exciting show, as we indicated. We're talking about the $92 billion investment in Pennsylvania that was announced by U.S. Senator Dave McCormick and President Donald Trump in July. Great tidings for Pennsylvania's future, not only in energy, but in jobs, industrialization, and all the things that come with that. So we have a lot of good things to talk about today.
This is the Volpe Report, a weekly news and political interview show examining the latest local, state, and national issues with Chuck Volpe. Insightful, informative, controversial. The area's premier political talk show, the Volpe Report.
Welcome to part two of the show that began with the interview with, of course, our United States Senator and my good friend Dave McCormick, who's here not in his official capacity today, although he kind of is. It's really, he's here to honor his father and the rededication of this great academic center at Bloomsburg University, named after the McCormick family, named after his father. And, of course, I'm sure you all heard in part one the enormous contributions that his dad has made, not only to just higher education, but cultural life in Pennsylvania and public service in Pennsylvania. So now we turn to part two, and Senator, the more mundane aspects of politics and your day job, so to speak.
Beyond being a proud son.
Beyond being a proud son, no doubt, and you should be. The first part of this show is, or the second part now is this show. I want to talk about in July, when we were all off, including me, in summer places, and you were still hardworking for the taxpayers of Pennsylvania and the country. You, along with President Trump, at Carnegie Mellon University, had an innovation summit. The end game of which was to announce $90 billion, would it be, that was going to be earmarked to come to this state for innovation in energy, artificial intelligence, data centers, shipbuilding and hydroelectric power and dams and nuclear power and all of that to tap the unbelievable potential of Pennsylvania. So with that as the open, and you can run as long as you want, I'll get into some of the specific projects, but please talk about, and I've already in part one credited your wife who gave you the idea for the innovation. Right. So well, Dina, wherever you are,
like all good things in my life, it started with Dina.
Yes.
Dina had the idea that we should do an energy summit of some kind. And right after I won, I called President Trump and I said, Mr. President, he was very generous. Said, how can I help you? Right. You know, you were the only swing state that won. Pennsylvania was the only. We were 7 swing states. He won all 7. We only won 1 in the Senate. And I said, well, Mr. President, I want to do an energy and innovation summit in Pittsburgh. Wow. You know, you said in your first term that you were more worried about the people in Pittsburgh than Paris, and I want you to have an opportunity to come back and talk about that. So he agreed to it, and then we essentially had this vision of him coming, bringing together CEOs from energy, from technology, and from investing. Believe it or not, they had never come together in quite that way to talk about the opportunities, certainly in Pennsylvania. Once the president agreed, I started to get emails from all his cabinet. Can I come? Wow. Can I come? So we got his entire cabinet. And then I reached out to Governor Shapiro and said, listen, Governor, would you like to come to this? I think it's good to make this work for Pennsylvania. We need to be aligned.
Of course.
Senator Fetterman and I did a big event the night before.
You co-sponsored a bill. I'll get to that.
We've found a lot of things to do together. And so all of a sudden, this thing took on a life of its own. And we said, okay, well, if you're going to come and be in a round table with the President of the United States and you're thinking about investing, why don't you actually make the commitment to invest, right? So $92 billion, $40 billion in data centers, $52 billion in energy infrastructure, to include a commitment by Westinghouse to build 10 new nuclear reactors.
Tremendous.
This is huge. And the whole premise here is that we're in a battle with our main adversary, China, for leadership in AI, leadership in energy dominance. And so Pennsylvania can be at the forefront because we're in a second battle. We're in a battle with Georgia and Tennessee, Virginia and Texas for who's going to be the lead. Where is all this money going to come? And it's going to become to the people that have a vision for what they have to offer. So what do we have to offer? We're the number 2 energy producer in the country. We're the number 4 largest natural gas reserve in the world. We have incredible skilled labor that can meet the needs of building these data centers, building this new energy infrastructure. And we have incredible universities, which is why we hosted it at Carnegie Mellon. We have University of Pennsylvania, Penn State, we have Drexel, we have University of Scranton, where you went. We have incredible universities, academic institutions. So this was an opportunity to solidify our leadership position. So we got the commitments. Second thing we had is 150 media people.
Wow.
So we got to tell Pennsylvania's story. Wow. Here's what we have to offer. It was on it went round the clock on CNBC, on Bloomberg.
I watched it.
Every newspaper in Pennsylvania, every major newspaper, above the fold, front page, Pennsylvania, right?
Scranton Times. In fact, as I recall, I reached out to you this summer. I saw you on Sunday on Fox talking about it, which is why sometime when I'm down at my summer home, I get out of sight, out of mind. I stay clear from newspapers for a little while. A luxury you don't have, by the way.
I don't. I do.
And I said, oh, my God, I missed this. And I, of course, reached out.
It was unbelievable. And then the final thing is, and this is what got President Trump there, I believe. This is what we promised. We promised jobs for working families. This summit, those announcements will create somewhere between 50 and 75,000 new jobs, right? So this is a big deal. And that was what, those are the people we promised, working families. We promised to build opportunity for working families. So it turned out to be great. And we've seen all sorts of additional interest from that, more investment in Pennsylvania. But stepping back, I'd say that's just one of 4 big announcements that have happened since I've been in the Senate. The first one, Nippon partnership with U.S. Steel. Saves
$14.2 billion.
Exactly. Saves 4,000 jobs in the Mon Valley, makes Pittsburgh the center of next generation steelmaking, 10,000 new jobs building a new plant in Pittsburgh. Second big announcement, not far from Bloomsburg, in Berwick, 6 miles down the road, Governor Shapiro and I announced together $20 billion investment from Amazon into Pennsylvania, 2 huge data centers, one right here in Columbia County, one in Bucks County. These are huge campuses, thousands of jobs. Third announcement was the Energy Summit, $92 billion. And then the fourth one, totally separate from the summit, last week, Hanwha, which is the Korean firm that bought the Philadelphia shipyard, made an announcement they're going to invest $5 billion, 5,000 new jobs in building domestic shipbuilding capability, which I know we're going to talk about. It's a huge problem in our national defense. That'll take us from building a ship and a half a year in Philadelphia to 20 ships a year in Philadelphia. So what does this mean? This means that Pennsylvania can lead on energy and AI innovation. Pennsylvania can lead on defense reindustrialization. We need a vision for where we're headed, and I think that vision is starting to become clear to people.
No doubt, and you covered so much there. A couple other points I'd like to point out, not too far from here, speaking of that. There's going to be a dam hydroelectric center in the Susquehanna that's going to produce all this energy. So much. I had a couple of notes here about just some of it. You pretty much covered all of them, though. And what's great, a couple comments. One, people want to hear you and Democratic U.S. Senator John Fetterman. You co-sponsored a bill we're going to talk about his support for your idea, your innovation, your project, your promises with President Trump. And the governor of Pennsylvania, again, a Democrat who joined the summit, who went there, who is working with you on $20 billion projects with Google, he said, for data centers, artificial intelligence. People want that. Yeah. People are, as you know, sick and tired of the partisanship. But then I always respond, which is why I do this show. Yeah, but the Republicans didn't start this fight. So, but the future of our country depends on answering it. So, you have to handle aggression. The thing politically, to me, I've noticed is the progressive, especially the progressive radicals that have hijacked the Democratic Party, are very proactive. You can't. like it's a fight. I always learn, as probably your dad, I'm sure, taught you, is to try to walk away from them until you can't.
Right.
And then you have to stand and fight. West Point teaches that, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
So anyway, it's great to hear, though, of the bipartisanship you're working on with a Democratic U.S. Senator, with the Democratic governor of Pennsylvania, to make these things happen for Pennsylvania. So I know that people want to hear that. They get encouraged. Whatever side of the political map they're on, they are encouraged by hearing that this partisanship is possible.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I was in a brutal campaign, as you know. It was 300.
You're the guy from Connecticut,
Yeah,
the hedge
exactly.
fund guy. It had nothing to do with Pennsylvania.
$300 million of negative ads came against me. So, I persevered and I won. I spent a lot less money, but I think I had a clear message. And my message was things aren't on track, and we need to have fundamental change to make life better for Pennsylvanians. That's what I'm going to do. And I said during the campaign, so nobody should be surprised, I said, listen, I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative. Here's the things I believe in. Here's what I'm for. But I will work with anybody to deliver on those promises for Pennsylvania. Anybody. And, Senator Fetterman is a good example. He and I sat down soon after. He campaigned against me. He was with Senator Casey, of course. He and I sat down, we said, and he was very straightforward. He said, listen, you seem like a good guy. I don't have much tolerance for the silliness. I will always be direct with you. There's ways to work together. We can work together. We become good friends. Yeah. We probably agree on 30% and disagree with 70%, but we work like hell together on the 30%. Right. And he's co-sponsored my fentanyl bill. He's been a great supporter of my energy.
Talk about the co-sponsored bill I just read about. Talking about.
Yeah, we both have been strong supporters of Israel, strong supporters fighting against anti-Semitism, which has been a disgraceful thing on our nation's campuses. It's due to just weak leadership that hasn't enforced the law and made it safe for all students, not just Jewish students, to study and learn. And he's been a strong voice in that. So he and I have, introduced countless pieces of legislation. We just recently sent a letter to all the college presidents in Pennsylvania and said, you need to make sure that the Jewish students in your campuses are safe and secure. Right. Invest in what's necessary to do that. He's a common sense guy. And he understands Pennsylvania, and so he and I have found a way to work together.
And not surprised, because he has that courage that you have. He has been brutalized by the left of his own party.
Yeah.
Like personal, not just public policy or we disagree with you shouldn't be doing this. They've attacked him personally, his cognitive abilities.
It's vicious.
You were exposed to the same. I mean, so that's the state of affairs of the left.
I'll tell you a funny
nowadays.
story on that. He was just getting pummeled. I don't know, about 2 months ago, saying he wasn't all there cognitively and everything. And I sent him a text and said, geez, I think this is disgraceful. Yeah. Would you like me to come out and say something publicly? I don't want to hurt you, right? Because maybe a Republican supporting you will hurt you. Yeah. So I don't want to hurt you, but if you think, if you be helpful. He said, listen, nobody on my side's coming out. And so I came out and made a very strong statement about this is not the John Fetterman I know. We don't agree on everything, but he is all there, and he is a great patriot, and he's doing what he thinks is right for the country. And then a number of other people started to come on top of that, including some Democrats. But he is not afraid to stand up for what he believes in. And listen, none of us should have come here with the sole goal of getting reelected. The reason we come here is to get things done for the people we serve, and that's what he and I are both trying to do.
It's great to hear. Let's turn our attention now, and I have to say and give you additional credit. After your 22 heartbreaking defeat, it was by the smallest margin in Pennsylvania history, to Dr. Oz in the primary. We did a show not long after that. It was a 2-part show also. You had just come out with a book. And I'd like you to talk about, now you've come out with one with your wife since, but let's talk about that book, because you presciently painted how we were lagging behind, primarily China, in a lot of different areas, including our national defense, the security for the world that America provides, that China was taking that role, that they were becoming more of a threat, and how even in the economic sector and other sectors, there are competition now, like whether it's artificial intelligence now, data centers, energy production. So I'd like to, but of course you couldn't do anything about it then.
Yeah.
You wrote the book, but you weren't a senator.
Right.
Now you're a United States senator, you've won. So talk a little bit, I mentioned to you but before we did this part 2 of the show that back in 1960, a big issue in the campaign between John F. Kennedy, the Democrat, and Richard Nixon, the vice president running the Republican nominee for president, about this perceived missile gap, how America was lagging behind the Soviet Union, and that was at the height of the Cold War in 1960. 2 years later, we have the Cuban Missile Crisis, where the world came to the brink of nuclear disaster. But back then, it turned out in hindsight, we found out years later, as you often do, that really there wasn't that much of a missile gap, but it was an issue in the campaign. Well, we have an issue now. It's not a missile gap. We are lagging way, way behind the Chinese in terms of the military, in terms of the number of personnel, the equipment, the technology, the amount of assets, for lack of a better word, warplanes and ships and tanks and all the other things, drones. I read a piece, and then I'm going to turn it over to you because it ties right into your shipbuilding that you're going to start doing in Pennsylvania, and we need it everywhere. But I read a story. It was in, I want to say, it could have been the Washington Examiner, but a story about how we have lagged so far behind in our defense spending, but in certain ways. And one of the most important assets in this global world we live in now are ships. Yeah. Because not only because of their nuclear capabilities, because they can deliver the warplanes and other things, they can protect the seaways, which are so important to worldwide global trade. And that we were down to under, I think 22% was the exact number of ships we had at the end of World War II. Back then, we had 380 or 400 ships. Now we're down to 70 or 80 that actually work. Not even all of them are in the best of shape. And then they talked about how China has now become the leader. If you compare assets, it's them and it's us. So I like your comment on that. You had talked about the competition in that book. Yeah. And kind of tell the American people what the reality is. And it's not pretty.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd say I wrote the book you mentioned. It's called Superpower in Peril.
Of course.
And then I wrote another book with Dina a year and a half later. Dina reminds me almost daily that the book I wrote with her made the New York Times bestseller.
Yes, it did. By the way, congratulations. I was aware of that.
Not the book I wrote by myself. So, but the one line in the first page or two of that book says something like, China has a plan for becoming the global superpower, challenging American primacy. What's our plan? We don't have a plan. That was essentially the thesis of the book. And then it laid out what a plan would look like in terms of energy dominance, in terms of reshoring key manufacturing capabilities, in terms of making sure we can maintain innovation in artificial intelligence, and in terms of laying out the next generation of defense capabilities. So the power, projecting power going forward is not as simple as tanks and ships and missiles, because civilian technology or non-military technology and military technology have come together. That same artificial intelligence or radar or satellites that are going to oversee a military operation is a lot of what we use to run our society today.
Sure.
So economic power, innovation, military power, technology are all part of the same thing now. And America needs to remain at the very forefront of that. And so the good news is, I think, for those who are listening, is I think relative to 8 months ago, we're making huge progress. Tremendous. Right? You look at the focus on bringing industrial manufacturing back to the United States, whether it's steel making, whether it's semiconductors, whether it's pharmaceuticals. It's been a huge focus of President Trump's policies. The effort to secure our border, which was creating huge national security risks. There were President Biden's administration released the fact that there were hundreds of people that had crossed into our border that were on the terrorist watch list. We had people from all over the world. It wasn't just from South America or Central America. It was from Tajikistan and from the Middle East that were coming into our country. The effort that's been made to rebuild our military. There's a huge investment. We just passed the One Big Beautiful Bill. The One Big Beautiful Bill had $150 billion of new defense spending in there to do things like rebuild our ship building capability. I had mentioned the Philadelphia shipyard before. Just to put in perspective, we have about 3% in America of domestic shipbuilding capability. We have to buy our ships from other places. What's happening now is a reinvestment in submarines, in ships, in artillery, like in Scranton. The Scranton ammunition is
I know you were just there.
It's going around the clock because the 155 munitions are a key part of it. York, BAE Systems has the next generation armored combat vehicle that's being manufactured in York, a critical part of future force projection. We have Toby Hanna, as you know, where they're working on everything from drones to cyber. So Pennsylvania is uniquely positioned to lead this defense reindustrialization effort. We just have to lay out the vision. Pittsburgh has robotics and AI. And so that's one of the areas where I'm focused, is making sure that America wins the AI energy dominance, America wins the defense reindustrialization, America wins the life sciences battle, and Pennsylvania is at the forefront of that. The one thing I'll say about this is we need to be very self-critical. So when I look at our defense spending, I think President Trump's on the right track to increase our defense spending significantly. But sometimes people lull themselves into a sense of not being worried, because they say things like this: well, we spend $900 billion a year in defense. China spends half that in defense, right? But what they miss is that the military, and particularly the U.S. military, has had a bad habit of fighting the last war. Right. And if you look at that $900 billion we spend, 80% of it or more is on existing platforms, things that have been around for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And so we have a very small amount on next generation, whereas the Chinese and others are building from a baseline of much less of old platforms, and they're building next generation technology. That's the nature of warfare is changing dramatically. We see that in Ukraine with the swarms of drones. We see that with the next generation technology in the South China Sea. I'll give you one example. A new aircraft carrier, which I think we need more of, costs about $15 billion to build. You can buy 1,000 drones for $1 million a piece. A lot less than that, but you can buy 1,000 from. So you have $1 billion on drone capability. Those drones can take down a $15 billion carrier. So the nature of war is changing really quickly. So we need to invest in weaponry, but we also need to invest in a culture of innovation that's trying new things, that's learning the lessons of battles that are taking place everywhere. And we need to be ready, because I hope that we'll only have the good scenario. I hope things will break in the right way. But when you see a meeting last week with President Xi, President Putin, the president of North Korea, and Modi, who is Kim Jong-un, and Modi, who is not that happy with the United States right now, you say, okay, wait a second. This is not the alignment that we want. We need to be vigilant.
No doubt. And since we are, believe it or not, running short in time, I have to talk about, I remember you had a phrase that stuck with me. I'd heard it before, but it had been a long time. And in one of our interviews, it's got to be a year or two ago, you made a reference to, it's the canary in the coal mine. Well, you recently were the canary. You recently were in the coal mines, watching coal be extracted and how it was done. So talk a little bit about that. That's something I and most people, I'm going to guess, have never experienced out in the Pittsburgh area. So talk about that.
It was an incredible experience. So, starting point is, I said two things on the campaign. I said I'm for all forms of energy, whether that's wind or solar or natural gas or nuclear or coal. What I'm not for is subsidies. I'm not for the subsidies that distort the market and so forth. So we have a huge coal industry. We're one of the top 3 or 4 coal producers in the country. We're a net exporter of coal to many places around. Many of our plants here in Pennsylvania, and coal technology has evolved where it's becoming increasingly clean, and we're very dependent on coal, particularly for metallurgical coal that we use for steel production. So we have those big coal reserves both in northeastern Pennsylvania, around Pottsville, Schuylkill County. We also have them out in the west. And so I went into Core Natural Resources, which is the old Consol Energy. Okay. This is one of the biggest coal mines in the country. And I went down 1,000 feet.
Wow.
And then
you really went.
And then 4 miles on a trolley underneath the ground. And I met with a bunch of miners there. And I say, number one, these are God-fearing, America-loving patriots who are working on behalf of our country. They're big supporters of me. They're big supporters of President Trump because we've given them a line of sight on how their industry and their opportunity for the future is going to be there. Second thing is the technology is unbelievable. You're down there with these huge shearing machines that are carving off tons of coal, and then pushing it out. And we followed the coal out of the ground onto a train out to the harbor where it goes on ultimately to Baltimore. And it's incredibly sophisticated, incredibly safe in terms of the steps they've made, and a really important part of America's future. So it was great to do it and meet these guys firsthand. And
Americans.
Exactly.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You know, we're out of time now, Senator. I'm wondering, I'll have to ask the people at Fox Studios when they're putting this show together. I'm just thinking we might have to issue a trigger warning for the climate zealots that are going to be hearing this about you being in a coal mine.
Yeah.
We may just ruin their day if they hear all this stuff.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's
trigger warning.
Yeah. We're in a new world. We're in a new world where the demand for energy is going to triple over the next 15 years, in part because of the data centers we talked about. We need to use all forms of energy. It's a source of economic power. It's a source of military power. And we're blessed in Pennsylvania. So my view is we need to lean in to our natural resources and the great benefits we have.
You know the beauty of this, I think I did a view on this about some of the hypocrisy of the left Democrats that run the Democratic Party now, that their electric cars are usually fueled, one of the key sources of those charging stations, because remember, those batteries don't produce energy themselves. They have to be charged. Coal-fired energy plants are giving them their energy to drive their electric cars. You can't even make it up.
It's a crazy
Senator,
world.
great to see you. And great to talk. And mostly, great to be here in a day honoring, actually, not you, but your dad.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks,
you.
Senator.
Thank you for putting the profile on him.
We're again here today. This is the end of part 2 of our show. The first one, of course, was with his Chancellor Emeritus father, and today with U.S. Senator Dave McCormick. We'll be back next week. Thanks for joining us.
There are more places you can watch the Volpe Report, your premier political talk show. Tune in to Fox 56 every Sunday morning at 10:30 as we bring prominent national and state officials right into your living room. Or watch on YouTube at the Volpe Report, where you get full access to all of our episodes, wherever you are. Our guests are the newsmakers, the decision makers, the people who shape the policies that affect us all. We dive deep into what matters most to Pennsylvanians with in-depth interviews that give you the full picture. We're dedicated to providing you with unfiltered, thought-provoking conversations. Whether it's local policy, national politics, or everything in between, we're right here to break it down and keep you informed. So wherever you want to watch, the Volpe Report is always here for you, delivering everything you need to know in today's political landscape.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of the Volpe Report podcast. Be sure to visit our YouTube and Facebook pages for upcoming episodes. You can catch up on the Volpe Report podcast on your favorite podcast provider.